Greetings, class. This is Professor Mackenzie again. Today we're going to be looking at Chapter 16 in our textbook involving remedies. The learning objectives for this chapter, I want us to be able to understand the basic theory of contract remedies. We'll be looking at specifically types of legal remedies versus remedies that are labeled as equitable in nature. And then we'll lastly discuss limitations on remedies. For this chapter, it's a fairly quick, at least my kind of presentation of the core information in this chapter. It's a fairly quick presentation, but it gives you an idea of what some of your options are if someone has failed to perform and when you're kind of in that mode where you're trying to seek some kind of relief because of that failure to perform as promised. So when we speak of remedies, the purpose of remedies is not to punish the other party that breached. Rather, what we're trying to do is place the non-breaching party, or the innocent party, as I sometimes refer to them as, in as good a position, if not the position that they hoped to have been in prior to or but for the breach by the other side. And so the two types of legal remedies that are available to a party would be either legal or equitable. Legal usually involves more of a monetary aspect of a remedy, as opposed to equitable, which maybe this is where we're maybe trying to compel someone to perform as promised, if that performance is still possible. So kind of think of those two types of remedies, legal and equitable, in that manner. So when we're speaking of legal remedies, I try to kind of list out, all these different types of categories where you can seek damages. Compensatory or any specific damages that you can relate directly to the breach that you have sustained. And I'll go through some examples after I kind of explain each one of these. Incidental damages are maybe, damages that are in addition to the compensatory, and usually they provide for a cost for substitute goods or services. Consequential are maybe foreseeable damages that are flowing from the party that breached. Nominal damages are when maybe you really didn't suffer any specific monetary loss, but you have gone to court to maybe have a moral victory, and so a judge could impose some nominal amount of money damages against the party that breached, even though you didn't really suffer any financial harm. It's more of, again, like I said, it's a matter of honor in many cases. Liquidated damages, this is where you can insert in any contract that if one side fails to perform, this is by default the damages they have to pay. And so the critical thing with liquidated damages, one, it's great because it's a very simple number to go to, and it's negotiated in the beginning as you're kind of hammering out the details of any agreement. You could say, look, I hope this is going to work out great, but if I fail to perform, I agree I'll pay this amount. If you fail to perform, you agree to pay whatever amount. And if everybody agrees to that, then if a breach occurs, then if you end up suing, you're suing just for what they said they would pay. Hopefully, if they breach, they just pay, and then it's done at that point. But the critical thing to always remember with liquidated damages is that if you agree to it, then you cannot ask for additional damages, even if you have suffered additional damages. And again, I'll talk about a couple of examples there in a problem at the end of this chapter. The last one is punitive damages, and not every state permits punitive damages, but the idea here is that if someone breaches and it's deemed to be kind of like a willful or a malicious act, then it is possible to take whatever your damages are and then multiply those damages by up to a factor of 3. That's the punitive aspect of it, to kind of send a message to that party and to maybe other parties who are in a similar situation not to ever do something like that again. So again, not every state recognizes punitive damages, but at least that is an option in some cases. So, I always give the example, think of if you're planning on getting married, and so, a lot of times, when you make that announcement that you're going to marry someone else, the date that you select might be months into the future. That's normal because, there's a lot of planning necessary. And let's say whoever you've decided to marry, you want to have as part of the reception after the ceremony, you want to have maybe a sit-down meal. That's common. And so you go to a caterer and you try out their food. You like the menu options that they offer, and so you hire them. So maybe you put a down payment down, and balance due at some point before the actual wedding. So okay, so you have a contract. Let's say that you're getting close to the wedding. Maybe it's in a week, and the caterer calls you and says for some reason we can't perform. So obviously a very upsetting news to the couple that's about to be married, because 1 week is not a very big time window in order to replace a caterer. And so let's say that you scramble and you're like, okay, I'll deal with you later. The caterer that essentially is as anticipatorily breaching. This is a case where you don't want to wait and see if they're going to breach, because they probably will. And so wedding is a big deal. So let's say you go out into the community and you find 3 other caterers that are available. And let's say that, caterer A as an alternate is the exact same price. For whatever reason, you lucked out. Okay, so that's one option. Caterer B is, let's say, $5,000 more dollars. So it's going to be the original cost plus another $5,000. And then let's say caterer C is $10,000 more dollars. So you kind of see your range of options here. If those are in fact your 3 choices, you're obligated under this idea of mitigation of damages is to go with the one that is comparable in cost. If that is an option. You may be tempted to say, I want to go with the most expensive one and then charge that difference to the original caterer who breached just out of spite. But you can't do that if you have, a bid that is comparable in price. Let's say that first caterer was not available. So now you only have 2 options. One is $5,000 more, one is $10,000 more. And let's say that, okay, mitigation of damages, you've got to go with the one that's $5,000 more dollars, because you can't choose intentionally the most expensive one. So the compensatory damages are damages obviously caused by the breach. So the core cost that you were originally going to pay, you would sue over that. The incidental damages, obviously for the substitute services, that premium of an additional $5,000, you would seek that from the party that breached. So the original amount you wouldn't have to sue over, but that supplemental amount is the incidental you would seek damages over. If you're going with, let's say, that caterer that was at the same cost, you may still want to sue the original party that breached, but you might be seeking nominal damages, saying that, okay, maybe we didn't have to pay any additional amount, but we still want it on record that this person breached, and we want some kind of judgment against that person out of a sense of moral victory, I suppose. If your jurisdiction allows for punitive damages, then the fact that you had to scramble at the last minute, pay an additional $5,000 premium, you might want to say, I just want to times that by 3 if this jurisdiction provides for that. If it's deemed to be willful and malicious, that's usually the standard for states that do permit some type of punitive damages. But again, you get the idea, where it's like if we can kind of slot our damages in these different categories, and that's what you would seek if you actually end up litigating this in a court of law. When we talk about equitable remedies, these are usually in the nature of specific performance, injunctive relief, or maybe restitution. And so specific performance is a judicial order requiring someone to deliver a unique thing or to do something. Now, we can't force people to work against their will, but what you can do in some cases is if it involves a modicum or a minimal amount of effort, we can say we want you to complete this transaction. Example that I sometimes give in class is, let's say you're a buyer for a real estate, a house. You found a house that someone is selling, and so you've got all the financing, you're ready to go into closing, and let's say the seller at the last minute changes their mind. Maybe they're sentimental, maybe they're just emotional about the property, and they say, well, we changed our mind, we don't want to actually sell anymore. Well, you could go to court and say, Your Honor, we want you to, compel the seller to show up at closing and just sign off on the documents as they had promised, because we've done everything that was expected of us as the buyer. And so here you're seeking an equitable mechanism of relief, and in particular, you're looking for specific performance. Injunctive relief is a judicial order, and that directs someone to stop doing something that maybe they should or should not be doing. So again, if there's some kind of harm that is being, committed against you, then, an injunction is a way of saying, please stop doing this. And if you don't follow this judicial order, if it's approved, then that would be, contempt of court or whatever punishment the judge seems appropriate in that case. Restitution involves putting the parties back into the original position before they were in, before the contract was made. So this usually involves the return or exchange back of consideration. And so if I gave you a down payment and you gave me some kind of property, I would give you that, property back, and you would give me back my down payment, and it would be as if we never entered into the contract. So that would be an example of restitution at that point. So again, you've got a lot of options at your disposal if someone doesn't perform as promised. We have a bundle of legal remedies available if you want to seek monetary damages, or we also have a bundle of equitable remedies where it usually doesn't involve any type of monetary payment. But it's a way of trying to get to a more just result. I mentioned the duty to mitigate. So just kind of quickly, just to follow up on that, if you are the party that has been harmed, so you did nothing wrong, you were not the breaching party, you're the innocent party, then if you're seeking alternative sourcing of a product or service, you do have a duty, as I mentioned, under this notion of mitigation of damages, to go after the least expensive comparable option. And again, like with that wedding example, if you had three options, you might be tempted to go with the most expensive one, thinking, well, I'll sue the original breaching caterer and I'll have them pay that premium. You might be tempted to do that out of vengeance, or spite, but you're not permitted to do that. You have to go with whatever is the most, least, costly option. Now, if the least costly option is an additional $10,000, well, then you have no other choice then. But if you did have less expensive options, you should have gone with that less expensive option. The other thing to note, if you're dealing with liquidated damages, remember that whatever you ask for through contract, that's what you're going to be bound by with liquidated damages. You cannot seek additional damages, even if you can demonstrate that there are additional damages. You're locked into whatever that reasonable amount is that was provided for in the contract. This is the last slide I have for this chapter, but it's one of the problems that I discuss with this chapter. And so you can see here that it says Lippman made a $20,000 down payment on a piece of real estate. The contract stated that the buyer would be liable for damages in an amount equal to the down payment if the buyer broke the contract. So second paragraph, it says Lippman refused to go through with the contract and asked for the money back, the down payment. The seller, Leo, refused and actually counterclaimed, saying that he was entitled to additional damages from the buyer because the damages that he had suffered were more than the amount of the down payment. Now, what you have in this case is essentially cross claims. So Lippman is trying to sue to get his $20,000 back. Leo is trying to sue not only to keep the $20,000, but also to get more damages. That provision in the contract for sale of forfeiting the down payment if the buyer doesn't go through, that is called liquidated damages. Even if you don't list it as liquidated damages, that's what it is in the agreement, the concept of this. So Lippman is going to lose. He's not going to get the $20,000 back. So that down payment belongs to Leo. Leo, unfortunately, can't expect anything more than that $20,000. Let's say the fact that, by keeping it off the market, let's say Leo could demonstrate he actually lost $50,000 for some reason. Well, it's like that additional $30,000, he should have contemplated that and asked for that in the contract, but he didn't. So the only thing that he can get is what he did ask for, which is the $20,000 forfeit of the down payment from Lippman to Leo because the sale didn't go through. Anyway, I hope this chapter on remedies you find interesting. And as always, if you have questions, please feel free to let me know. I'm always happy to answer any questions that you might have. But have a good, safe, and productive rest of your day. Thank you.